My name's Jamie Scott, and I'm the District Manager and Research Director for the Lake County Vector Control District. And we're a public health agency here in Lake County, and our job is to control things that transmit diseases to people, like mosquitoes and ticks. We also deal with yellow jackets, so if anyone has problems or questions about that, they can contact our agency for some help or services. I love my job. I think I have the best job in the world, not just because I work in this lake every day, but it's just so interesting working with the diversity of animals we have and the ecology and how that all interacts, and then of course the people who come in and the questions they have. It's when people bring in an insect for identification, I always tell them, I said, I feel like it's Christmas because I never know what's going to be in that jar until I open it up, and it's really exciting as an entomologist to see the insects that people see here and be able to give them information about it. The most unique insect I've come across in Lake County, there are so many insects that I think are really neat here. I love the rain beetles that come out after those first big rains in the fall. They're a big, kind of bumbly, dark brown beetle that most people notice when they bang up against their sliding glass doors at night. I think those are pretty cool. A lot of people don't know we have glowworms here, and I think the glowworms are super exciting. So we don't have fireflies, but we have some relatives, and the crawling stage glows. And you can find a couple species here, some down here in Lakeport and others as far up as Cobb. So I think those are pretty neat. My favorite thing about Lake County is the nature, all of the things we have outside. And we have so many different habitats. I'm very fond of the water habitats, but I love all the hiking trails we have. I love to paddle out on this lake, and I really like coming out in the really early morning when it's quiet and watching the world wake up on the lake. It's so quiet you can hear the bird wings as they fly past. The lake is our central feature in Lake County. It's called Lake County mainly because of Clear Lake. There's a misperception that because of the lake we must have a ton of mosquitoes, but most of the lake doesn't produce mosquitoes. The only time we see mosquitoes coming from the lake water is in the early part of the year. So about January, February, March, we have mosquito eggs that have been there for a whole year, and then they hatch into larvae, and those develop in the shallow wetlands along the edges of the lake. So mostly we see that from the south part of Lakeport down through the state park, and then around Anderson Marsh and a few of the areas around the Clear Lake Oaks. Most of the lake doesn't produce mosquitoes because it's deep and there's a lot of wave action and there are a lot of predators. Mosquito larvae, the immature stage that develops in standing water, doesn't do well with that much motion. They need a very quiet, still place to develop. The other place that we'll sometimes see mosquitoes in the lake is when we have a lot of really thick algae caked on the top. And that, again, doesn't happen in most of the lake. It's very select areas, usually some of the sloughs or the backwater areas that don't get a lot of circulation. And we'll get some mosquitoes that will develop on top of little water pools in that, or sometimes even in the cracks. But that's a much less common situation. That tends to happen in the later summer, so more like August or September. We work with a lot of other agencies that are involved with the lake, like Lake County Water Resources and Environmental Health and Public Health. Even though we're a separate entity, we work very closely with them and exchange a lot of information and cooperate wherever we can. Yeah. So the district was established in 1948. This was just a little after World War II, and we had a lot of electric lights and a lot of more recreational time. And so the Clear Lake gnat became a real problem here on the lake because this gnat would emerge by the billions from the lake. It was a scale like we don't see today. We talk about the rice flies, which is that larger chironobin gnat. The Clear Lake gnat was much smaller. It's about 1/4 of an inch long, and it would come out of this lake by the billions. They set a light trap one night and collected 88 pounds of this gnat coming to the light in just 2 hours. So it's a much different scale than what we deal with today. And we were the only place that seemed to have this problem, the scale of emergence, because our lake is 65 square miles of gnat habitat. So the district was originally established to figure out how do we deal with this Clear Lake gnat that is a problem. The reason it was a problem is because its emergences were so large. It posed a problem for people breathing because you could actually inhale these gnats and you couldn't breathe if you were in a swarm. And I've talked to people who lived here at the lake in the 40s and 50s, and they said just coming to town, you'd keep a rag in your car so that you could clear off your headlights and your windshield. And people would have to stop every quarter mile during an emergence just to clear off their headlights so they could see where they were driving at night because the gnats were so abundant. So it's a scale unlike anything we deal with today. The way that the district dealt with this at the time is they used a product, it's an organochlorine called DDE, which is similar to DDT. And this was the age of amazing pesticide science, and they had discovered DDT, and it was incredibly useful because it could kill all of the insects, which was seen as a really good thing for the farmers and the people who were growing crops, because suddenly you could have these crops that had no insect damage. So it was a lot more productivity and a lot more usable product. The downside that we know now is that it was a very persistent pesticide and remained in the environment long after it was applied. This was before the EPA existed, and we had agencies that looked at all aspects of a pesticide's use. You know, how long it was in the environment, what other species it impacted, its impacts further down the food web. So it was a very different environment than we have now for our pesticide regulation and knowledge. Anyway, the district made 3 applications of DDE to this lake for the control of the Clear Lake gnat. And the first application was very, very good. It controlled the gnat for a few years. Then they had to make a second application. They found that it was less effective, and by the third application they had a very low level of control, and they were able to figure out that the gnat had become resistant to DDE. And that was due not only to the district's applications, but also to all of the runoff from the agricultural applications of DDT to the lake, because it's the same detoxification mechanism. So the district stopped using this after that third application and looked for other ways to control the Clear Lake gnat that didn't include an organochlorine. Now, all of this work also had an effect on other wildlife in the lake. And Clear Lake is home to a huge population of nesting grebes, the Clarks and western grebes. And what they saw was in the mid-50s and into the 60s was that the grebes were not reproducing here on the lake like they had been. And nobody knew why. Eventually they put the pieces together and realized that it was a downhill effect from the DDT and DDE applications. And this was highlighted in Rachel Carson's book. Everybody knows Silent Spring. And this was the wake-up call for a lot of people to recognize the impact that pesticides and other chemicals can have within our environment. And by the time Rachel Carson had written this book, the district had long ago abandoned using the product because it was no longer effective. So the environment we have today for pesticides is very different than what the environment was for pesticides in the 1940s and 50s. We have the EPA today, so the Environmental Protection Agency, and every product that the district uses has to be registered with the Environmental Protection Agency as a pesticide. We also have to get clearance and approval from the California regulatory agencies, which is the California Department of Pesticide Regulation. So we have like a double level of coverage here in California. And the products that we use today are very specific for what we're treating and where we're treating. And this is a vast difference from the era of DDT and the organochlorines, where there would be broad spectrum treatments that would kill all of the bugs. Now, when we are treating for mosquitoes, we like to treat them in the water where they develop. And the product that we use is a very specific soil bacterium that affects the mosquitoes without affecting anything else that lives in that water or swims in it or drinks it. It doesn't affect the plants that are in the water. And we can target just the mosquito without disrupting the ecology of that water body. And that's a huge advance in how we use pesticides today, not just in mosquito control, but in really all areas of pest control. We have much more specific products that we use that have to go through a lot of approval and consideration for how they affect the greater environment as well as our target pest. I think about what's considered a pest a little bit like what is considered a weed. And a weed is a plant that's growing someplace that you don't want it. And I will say a pest is really an insect or an animal that is someplace you don't want it. or that there's too much of it. So a lot of what we do in mosquito control isn't about killing all of the mosquitoes. It goes back to that flatten the curve image that all of us became so familiar with during COVID. And mosquito control has been flattening the curve of the mosquito population its entire existence. It's about integrated mosquito management, which means we use all those tools in the box to try to bring the mosquito population down to a level below where we're likely to see mosquitoes transmit diseases. And in some places that also means that we're going to try to reduce the mosquito number low enough that they're not biting people very often at all, so that the other products that we use, like mosquito repellent or long clothing, are more effective. We don't use a single tool for mosquito control. We look at ways to reduce the water where they're developing. We can use some natural predators like mosquito fish. We can use a lot of biorational products, so things that are biologically derived like BTI or Bacillus sphericus. And ideally, we're doing all of that to control the immature stage of the mosquito that's in the water, because they're very easy to control in a small body of water where they can't get away from what we're using. By the time they emerge as a biting adult mosquito, we have to use different products, and they're, I say, a little less specific overall, but the way we apply them and the time we apply them, they're still effective for the mosquitoes without affecting the non-target insect like the bees and the butterflies and all of what we consider to be the good insects. So a lot of times I'm asked about what insect repellent should I use. And there are several very good products. The name brand is not as important as what the active ingredient is. So if you look on a repellent, usually there's a little box that says active ingredient. DEET is actually a great product. It's very effective for mosquitoes and other biting flies. When it's applied properly, it's a safe product to use. It's appropriate to use on most people, even small children. There are a lot of other products besides DEET that I like. Picaridin. It's a really nice product I like because it's not greasy and it doesn't smell. And what I like about it is that the only way that I know that I'm using it is that the mosquitoes leave me alone. Some people like a product they perceive to be more natural, and so you can use oil of lemon eucalyptus. For me, I think the smell's a little strong for me, but a lot of people appreciate having something that they perceive as organic, and they feel that's a much safer product. But all of those have been approved by the Environmental Protection Agency and are effective against repelling mosquitoes. There are a few other sites on the EPA's website. I'll give you a link to that that you can provide people with. And they actually have a very handy tool on the website that helps you choose the repellent that is best for you, for how long you'll be out, how often you're willing to apply it, and what your preferences are. So we have a very long history of doing water quality and water clarity, as well as some water chemistry testing throughout the lake, as well as looking at some of the zooplankton and phytoplankton that are present in the lake. We continue to do some of that work today. We go out and do lake checks roughly once a month to look at the Clear Lake gnat, some of the other benthic insects in the lake, and still do some water quality checking today.